Think of how massively stupid that was. And of course, it was the lure of the really easy money that the idiot was paying you, being the prime broker for a jerk. But he was a convicted insider trader that came out of the craziest part of the hedge fund industry. And they were getting unusual profits by extending unusual credit. I mean, it was just, the world was shouting at them, crook, fool, and they didn't listen. They thought this is where the easy money is, crooks and fools.
There's one rule
we don't like either.
We learned a long time ago is that you can't make a good deal with a bad person. Just forget it. You know, if you think you can draw up a contract that is going to work against a bad person, they're going to win. For one thing, they probably enjoy litigation, but Berkshire Hathaway as an entity, or me personally, I think, we don't want to spend our life, doing that sort of thing. And besides, the bad guys win. They know more games. They may lose eventually, but it's no way to spend your life.
Charlie, it wasn't just Credit Suisse that got pulled in by that. There were a lot of firms that were doing business with Archegos, and...
Yes, they were all foolish, but Credit Suisse has managed to be the biggest fool of all.
In 1934, after the Great Crash, they held these hearings, and they decided that unusual amounts of leverage were one cause of the problem in the 1929, and that it could pose dangers even to the economy. So they gave the Federal Reserve Board the right to establish how much people could borrow against stocks, margin requirements.
Which was a very good idea.
It was a terrific idea. The Federal Reserve, between 1934 and 1973, used that power, I think, 23 or 24 times. They even raised margins to 100%. But they were the regulators of determining whether excess leverage might have systemic problems associated with it. And then the rule in 1973 or 4 was 50%. The rule today is 50%. It has, in the last 40 plus years, first 40 some years, it had 23 changes. They went to 100%, they went down to 20, all kinds. Then it was a signal to the economy and all kinds of things. And essentially, Wall Street figured out how to get around that.
They lobbied through changes in the law
so
they could have unlimited leverage and keep the transactions off the books and subject to murky accounting.
The banks would say, we made it through this, we absorbed all the problems ourselves, and many of us, it won't even take a substantial hit on the balance sheet for it.
Well, there's an old story about all these banks that think they've done so well. These two guys are fighting with razors, and one takes a big swipe, the other guy says, you missed me, and the guy says, wait until you shake your head.
So what would you tell regulators today? What would you do?
Well, the regulators aren't, but they need to change laws now. Of course, if you're running a gambling parlor, you want the big players to gamble more furiously. And that's what the securities business allowed people to do. It was a big mistake. It created a lot of misery. We don't want to suck people into gambling for way more than they can afford. And you get into clearance. There were clearance risks in the thing. The whole market was in chaos. The people who are making money out of this unreasonable extension of credit argue for it, and nobody's speaking against it. The last time around, we got the correct regulation that came and stayed for a long time on margin debt, only because we had the worst depression in the history of the English-speaking world. That's what it took to get a little sense into the politicians. This time around, it's just total return swap.
So what fixes it, though? I mean, there have been suggestions that there needs to be more transparency. There needs to be really a crackdown on allowing people to lever up like this. What's the answer?
The correct answer was never to have allowed most of the stuff to start.
But
you allow the wrong kind of stuff to start, and it runs on you.
It is tough to be, very, very, very tough to be a regulator. To really go after the big stuff, you're attacking the profit center of institution after institution after institution.
The prime brokerage thing, by its nature, means you're specializing in lending to the big swingers. And of course it's dangerous. And the rules they violated, the same guy was getting 4 or 5 brokers at once, and of course he was buying stocks to keep them up to prevent margin calls. And once you start doing that, you're headed for an ugly ending, and of course it happened.
But do you think that it would take a systemic breakdown before changes would actually get implemented again, like you referenced with the Great Depression?
The last time it took the worst depression in the English-speaking world in all history. That's what it took to get the last correction. I certainly don't want that.
No,
a wise regulator stops this stuff before it starts.
It's very hard to stop.
What interests me in this is that the communist Chinese behave the way I am talking in favor of. And our own wonderful free enterprise economy is letting all these crazy people go to this gross excess.
Becky,
The people who are not avoiding it are the communist Chinese.
Oh.
They step in preemptively to stop speculation.
Charlie, you said communist China is doing all the things that we should be doing right now, and I can't help but think of what they've done to Jack Ma.
It amuses me, you know.
Well, what about what they've done to Jack Ma? He's kind of disappeared.
Well, yes, but Jack Ma's one of the swingers. So they just they said, the hell with you. He basically gave a speech when he said to a one-party state, well, you guys are a bunch of jerks, don't know what you're doing, and I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to do it better. And he was going to wade into banking and no rules and just do whatever he pleased. The Chinese communists did the right thing. They just called in Jack Ma and say, you aren't going to do it, Sonny. And I don't want all of the Chinese system, but I certainly would like to have the financial part of it in my own country.
Although Ant Financial was bringing banking to a huge unbanked population before. I mean, there were things that they were doing that...
I know, but you don't want to let any swinger run a bank. Let the swingers do something else.
Who are the swingers here in this country?
Well, I don't want to start naming swingers.
they'll appear.
You know, the way the story has kind of been painted is that it's the Chinese communists who don't want to lose power and some of the capitalists who have maybe gained too much power, under at least what the communists might like to see.
Both groups want more power, not less.
Politicians in this country want more power, and the rich want more power.
Yes, yes. No, what's different in China, yeah. But the banking system, take shadow banking, which we have in this country. People say, well, it's the unbanked. Well, the whole leverage buyout lending operation practically left the banks and went to shadow banks in our own country. And it hasn't caused any big trouble yet, but I'll be amazed if it doesn't.
Well, Jamie Dimon has said that, and like look out for some of the fintech areas.
I don't think allowing all the swingers in the world to act as though they're banks is a good idea.
Which maybe we should talk about Robinhood.
Robinhood is beneath contempt.
Why?
Well, it's a gambling parlor masquerading as a respectable business.
And the pushback on that is always, this is a way of getting average people into the markets.
Well,
people who
of
didn't have
course you don't
access.
want to say it's a gambling parlor, but it is a gambling parlor.
It's not encouraging people to buy a very, very, very low-cost index fund and hold it for 50 years. I will guarantee you that you will not walk in there, get that advice.
No.
Instead, you'll get advice on how you can trade options, and they'll tell you that...
And it's telling people they aren't paying commissions when the commissions are simply disguised in the trading. It's basically a sleazy, disreputable operation. And the interesting thing about it is that some good people you would be glad to have marry into your family have backed it.